An unexpected trade could completely change the dynamics of the Vikings in the 2025 season, and almost no one is talking about it. The franchise is considering a trade that could happen at any moment, and the name on everyone's mind is Sam Howell, currently with the Seahawks. But why are the Vikings eyeing him? And what does this reveal about the team's strategy for 2025? In the next few minutes, you'll understand why this decision could be crucial for the season and whether Howell is truly the best option to back up J.J. McCarthy. The Minnesota Vikings are exploring options to strengthen their backup quarterback position for the 2025 season, and one name gaining traction behind the scenes in the NFL is Sam Howell, currently on the Seattle Seahawks roster. With the young J.J. McCarthy expected to take over as the starter, the franchise is looking for a reliable backup, and Howell has emerged as a viable alternative in the trade market. The Vikings' need for a backup quarterback became a priority following the departure of experienced players and the lack of aggressive moves in free agency. Brett Rypien, currently the only backup on the roster, does not inspire full confidence within the franchise or among fans. As a result, the front office continues to evaluate different options to bolster the group before the start of the season. The search for an experienced backup led the team to consider names like Joe Flacco, Ryan Tannehill, and Carson Wentz. But none of these options were prioritized. Given this scenario, the team has turned its attention to the trade market, where Sam Howell appears as an affordable and promising solution. Sam Howell arrived in the NFL with high expectations after his time at the University of North Carolina. Initially projected as a potential first-round pick in the 2022 draft, his stock fell, and he was ultimately selected by the Washington Commanders in the 5th round. During his full season as a starter in 2023, Howell accumulated 3,946 yards with 21 touchdowns and 21 interceptions, in addition to suffering 65 sacks, the highest number in the league that year. His first half of the season was promising, leading the NFL in passing yards after 10 weeks, but his performance dropped drastically in the final games. This inconsistency led the Commanders to seek a revamp at the quarterback position, resulting in his trade to the Seattle Seahawks in 2024. With his new team, Howell took on the backup role behind Geno Smith, but had limited participation throughout the season. In 2 games played, he completed only 35.7% of his passes, accumulating 24 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, and was sacked 4 times. At 24 years old, Sam Howell is still viewed as a quarterback with growth potential. His mobility in the pocket, arm strength, and ability to improvise are qualities that have caught the attention of the Minnesota Vikings coaching staff. Head coach Kevin O'Connell has a track record of developing quarterbacks, and the idea of molding Howell within his offensive system makes sense for the franchise. The Vikings' offensive scheme requires a quarterback capable of executing structured plays while also having the ability to extend plays and connect on deep passes, traits present in Howell's game. Additionally, his rookie contract makes him a financially affordable option. He will cost just $1.1 million against the salary cap in 2025, significantly less than what veterans like Kirk Cousins will command. This factor could weigh heavily in the front office's decision as they seek a balance between cost, potential, and experience. According to sources close to the franchise, the Seattle Seahawks do not consider Howell an essential piece of their roster, which opens the door for negotiations. League experts estimate that a 5th or 6th round pick in the 2026 draft could be enough to finalize the trade. For the Vikings, this would be a relatively low investment considering that Howell still has development potential and could provide stability in McCarthy's absence if the young starting quarterback needs more time to adapt to the NFL or suffers an injury. Howell would represent a more solid alternative than Brett Rypien. Despite his qualities and cost-effectiveness, betting on Sam Howell is not without risks. His NFL track record indicates difficulties in decision-making under pressure and a tendency to suffer many sacks, aspects that could compromise his performance if he is called upon as the starter. Additionally, his recent statistics in Seattle are not encouraging, with a rating of just 14.6 and an average of 1.7 yards per attempt. This raises questions about his development and ability to perform well in a new offensive system. The Minnesota Vikings continue to monitor the quarterback market and are expected to make a decision about the backup position in the coming weeks. While J.J. McCarthy continues his adaptation to the league, the franchise needs to decide whether to invest in a veteran or bet on a younger name like Howell. If the trade happens, Howell will have the opportunity to reinvent his career in Minnesota, competing for a key role within the team. For the Vikings, this could be a strategic move that offers short-term security and long-term growth potential. Whatever the final decision, one thing is certain: the search for a reliable backup remains one of the franchise's priorities before the start of the 2025 season. Analyzing Sam Howell's numbers provides a more detailed picture of his performance and what he might bring to the Minnesota Vikings if the trade goes through. In 2023, as the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders, Howell threw for 3,946 yards, finishing as the 12th quarterback with the most passing yards in the NFL. However, his season was marked by inconsistencies, recording 21 touchdowns and 21 interceptions. One of the most concerning aspects was the number of sacks he endured, 65, the highest in the league. In the first half of the season, his performance was promising. In the first 10 games, he led the NFL in passing yards with 2,783 and ranked among the top 5 in touchdown passes with 17. However, in the last 7 games, his performance plummeted, with only 4 touchdowns and 12 interceptions contributing to the team's streak of 8 consecutive losses. After being traded to the Seattle Seahawks in 2024, Howell saw limited playing time. He appeared in 2 games, totaling just 24 yards, no touchdowns, and 1 interception. His rating of 14.6 and completion percentage of 35.7% indicate struggles during his brief stint in Seattle. Considering his entire NFL career, Howell has accumulated 4,139 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, and 23 interceptions with a rating of 77.5. Despite the challenges, his track record shows flashes of talent, especially when he had adequate support around him. One of the factors that makes Howell an attractive target for the Vikings is his low salary cap hit. With an impact of just $1.1 million on the team's cap in 2025, he represents a financially affordable option, allowing the franchise to allocate resources to other areas of the roster. Additionally, his arrival would bring flexibility to the Vikings. If J.J. McCarthy needs more time to develop or suffers an injury, Howell could step into the starting role without requiring drastic changes to the offensive scheme. His familiarity with modern systems facilitates this transition. On the other hand, if McCarthy quickly establishes himself, Howell would still hold value as a rotational piece or even as a future trade asset, should he stand out in training in any potential in-season appearances. The Minnesota Vikings will need to evaluate how much it's worth investing in Howell. Experts believe a 5th or 6th round pick in the 2026 draft might be enough to convince Seattle to part ways with the player. Meanwhile, Seattle may prefer to keep Howell as a backup unless they find another reliable option for the position. The final decision will depend on what the Vikings front office values more: experience and stability in a veteran like Joe Flacco or Ryan Tannehill, or developmental potential in a young quarterback like Howell. With the offseason progressing and the start of the season approaching, the outcome of this potential negotiation is expected to unfold in the coming weeks. Whichever path is chosen, the Vikings need to address their backup quarterback situation as soon as possible to ensure security and competitiveness for the roster. The possible acquisition of Sam Howell by the Minnesota Vikings reflects a strategic approach that balances cost, potential, and immediate need. With J.J. McCarthy projected as the starter, the team needs to ensure there is a reliable backup to avoid unnecessary risks throughout the season. In this context, Howell emerges as a viable alternative, especially considering his affordable contract and the characteristics of his game, which fit into Kevin O'Connell's offensive scheme. However, betting on the young quarterback is not without challenges. His inconsistency in the NFL, evidenced by high rates of sacks and interceptions, raises doubts about his ability to perform a solid role if he needs to step into the starting position. Additionally, his brief stint in Seattle was unproductive, generating questions about his development. The risk that Howell may not meet expectations is a factor the Vikings will need to consider before finalizing the trade. On the other hand, the prospect of development under O'Connell's guidance could make a difference. The coach has already demonstrated skill in the evolution of quarterbacks, and Howell still has the age and physical tools to grow within a well-structured system. If he can correct his flaws and improve his game reading, he could become a valuable asset for the team, whether as a reliable backup or even as a trade piece in the future. The Vikings' final decision will depend on how the front office and coaching staff evaluate the cost-benefit of the trade. The estimated price, a 5th or 6th round pick in the 2026 draft, is relatively low, making the transaction a low financial risk. However, the team also needs to consider whether an experienced veteran might be a safer choice, especially given the team's playoff potential. If the trade for Howell goes through, the quarterback will have a new chance to prove his worth in the NFL. Unlike his situation in Washington, where he was forced into a starting role prematurely, and Seattle, where he had limited opportunities, in Minnesota he could play without immediate pressure, focusing on technical improvement. This could be crucial for his trajectory in the league and for the Vikings, who are seeking stability and security at the quarterback position. In the coming days, as talks between Minnesota and Seattle progress, the team will need to decide which path to take. Regardless of the outcome, the need for a reliable backup for McCarthy remains one of the franchise's top priorities before the start of the 2025 season. And you, Vikings fan, what do you think of this possible trade? Would Sam Howell be a good choice to back up J.J. McCarthy, or should the team look for another option? Leave your opinion in the comments. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any updates, and leave a like to support our content. Thank you for watching until the end, and go Vikings!